Welcome back to Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate Prowler Only. Last time we took on some lower ranked typer monsters, and this time, as per usual, we'll be taking on some higher ranked ones, kind of going back and forth between them. The lower ranked ones aren't that interesting. There's some changes obviously, but the monsters' movesets themselves, especially that early on, are simple enough to where you may notice a change or two there, but it's not going to change the fight completely. However, today we're going to be taking on some tougher stuff. First hunt we're going to be doing is called Backwater Battle and has us hunting a Hyper Diablos in the desert. Got our ice weapon equipped and we'll head on out. All right, Hyper Diablos, and this one actually looks to be pretty small and may actually be a small crown. That's a really small Diablos. I'm a little out of practice, as you may probably know. I haven't actually put out any of these in a while, so bear with me. I've practiced this guy once recently, and then I haven't fought the other monster that we're doing today, so hopefully that'll make it a little more interesting. Diablos isn't really too special. He's similar to a Tigrex, where it's just, you know, very high non-elemental monster that can deal a lot of damage, but he's kind of a walking tank. So he'll take a lot, but he's slow, so you can actually predict some of his attacks pretty easily. Gives you lots of openings for Mega Boomerangs and whatnot, just depending on what cycle he's in and whether or not he's enraged during certain attacks. Thankfully, since we are ranged, we don't have to deal with this tail and stuff as often. We will still have to deal with it if he's like rushing us or things like that. So as long as our palicos are up, we should be fine. I'm going to try to draw him over here while he's digging to maybe tackle onto this stone. I'm not sure if he can, and he already destroyed it, so maybe should have waited for an actual charge and not just for something that could maybe be a charge. This is a little tackle there. We're going to go for the middle part. That way we're hitting the stomach. We may be piercing through other things as well, but surprisingly, and this is something I kind of have a hard time remembering, ice is still the best element here, and I think it's the same way in World. And probably Rise as well, but I generally compare this game to World because they came out very close to each other. This one came out in 2017 and then World came out in 2018. But the other elements that are okay are actually a three-way tie for second place. Fire's the worst, but then you get water, ice, and thunder, which all share the same, which I thought was interesting. There's not really too often that happens, but it is pretty neat, you know. That does open a lot more options for your weapons, depending on how weak the monster is to cutting or blunt, and what kind of play style you're going for. Would you rather have higher element with the weapon, or would you rather have, say, higher raw or affinity or something like that? So it does open that up a little bit more, but ice is still the best, so you're probably just going to end up using ice. There may be use case for the Mizutsune weapon because it is a cutting one and it has high raw, so even if you're dealing slightly less elemental damage, you won't have to worry as much because you're still dealing very high cutting damage and very high just standard raw, even with that negative affinity. And it isn't going to be giving you as much gauge as this weapon will, obviously, because it's not a deviant weapon, but it still feels pretty nice. And Bloodbath is different. He does take more water damage, I believe, than ice. Haven't checked in a minute, but that was always the go-to weapon that I used for Bloodbath. I think this will be a good opening. It's a bit rough. Sometimes he'll do this little idle animation and sometimes he won't. I think if you are in a better position, you can almost always get a Mega Boomerang out safely. But there are some times where you may gamble it and get punished for it. And I may be punished here for it. I'm going to try to dodge into him. Since he is smaller, we actually have a lot more leeway in just hanging around him because he's not going to be moving as much whenever he does move compared to his larger counterparts. Maybe could have gotten another Mega Boomerang out there, but I'm going to try to just keep going through him. Obviously, if you want the horn breaks, go for it. You can't carve the horn, but you will still get the materials. And there may be a special material if you break both horns. I know that's kind of the case for like pre-ultimate. And I only remember that because you actually make some Diablos weapons there. I think the Lance had slime element, and that was really good in that game. At the very least for staggering a monster and dealing good damage to it. Alright, does a little horn swipe there. I'm going to wait and see what he does. And you can kind of just stay close to him. Again, since he's so much slower than something like Bloodbath even though Bloodbath himself is slow compared to Deviants, you're very just kind of safe. You know, there's not too often, as long as you're not getting too greedy, that you're not going to be able to get some attack out. I'd say the worst part is the digging, and obviously if you're playing as a hunter here, you can use sonic bombs. I would not recommend ultrasonic horn because it just takes too long, and you can't rely on that. But here I could have actually gotten a Mega Boomerang out, and I should have, because I am very filled up on gauge, and I don't want to waste the stuff I am getting from just attacking them. And as you saw from that first area, I hardly ever got hit, if at all. And I want to say probably most of the stuff I've taken is just from chip damage and whatnot. So again, it's not terrible. It's just, if you want to be more aggressive, you are putting yourself in more positions to take damage. Like here, I'm going to wait. He's doing his idle animation, so I'm safe. But sometimes he can combo that, so you do want to make sure he doesn't do that so you get walloped. We'll wait here again. He's doing another one. I'm going to ready this in case he does the idle animation. He's not. He's going for this, so I'm going to try to hit him with a couple of hits before he digs. And then now I need to reapply big boomerangs. It just kind of missed me there. I'm not going to assume he's going to taunt because he doesn't. Just going to walk forward here, do his little tail flip. May actually do that. I don't think he can cancel that, so he does have to do the 2, so that may be another chance for a Mega Boomerang there. Hitting out as many of those as possible is going to be really our goal. I've already broken something, probably the back, because that's what we've been dealing the most damage to. And that may have been a safe spot for a Mega Boomerang. Again, that's just what I'm looking for. What has a decent amount of long animation time. You just want to make sure you're not throwing it at him, and then he digs and it completely misses. It's not going to be the end of the world if you play it safe, because you're still dealing decent damage to him, especially on the stomach if you're aiming for that. And obviously the tail is a weak spot too if you're using a cutting weapon, so that's another just very large spot you can attack. I'm going to actually dodge into this here. I think, and this may be a bit greedy. Okay, yes, this was greedy, but he's actually going to do a slow attack here, so I can take that. And yes, it still does a lot of damage. It's just that his attacks are so few and far between. Like, we have both of our defense buffs up, and that still did so much. He doesn't deal any element damage, so that's not going to be any of the problem either. It's just something that he does a lot of damage doing. He may be moving here. No, he's moving a little bit, but he's not moving areas. Did look a bit odd, though. The tackle is going to flip up. I think that means it's a combo ender and he can't do the little taunt. Could be wrong, though. Just trying to realize when the taunt actually happens is really important. This will hit me. Tried to dodge in time, however, I was just locked in that animation. So that was my bad entirely. Couple of boomerangs here. We'll dodge to the left. If he does face turn towards us, he does not. Not quite sure what he probably is just repositioning. He'll do that sometimes. Little horn flip upwards. Keep going for this. Yes, we are hitting the legs, like I said before, but we will get a topple eventually if we're dealing too much damage to it. So it's kind of a win-win. Not completely. This may not end well. I am far away. However, he does just keep running into walls. Maybe he's leaving. Okay, that was weird. I don't know why he pathed that way instead of just straight towards the exit, but you can't really understand them sometimes. Good flinch after a attempt to tackle from him. Tried to dodge into that. Didn't even get the dodge. It's okay, though. If he tackles again, I am going to for sure Mega Boomerang. I think I'm safe here. Yes. Okay, good. It's not always safe after back-to-back tackles. A lot of the time it is, but sometimes he does just kind of link single tackles together and it seems like he's just doing a combo, but in reality he was not. All right, here comes just a little bite. That's a very short ranged. The tail is a hitbox on that attack, so if you are behind him when he does the bite, it will still hit you. It's the same animation as Plesioth, so very similar actings in regards to that. It's just that it can't put you to sleep, unlike Plesioth. Got a KO finally. I was actually punishing those double, horn sweeps because he does actually have a lot of time, even when it's charged as hyper, between those that you actually have a really good opportunity to punish for. So as long as we keep getting hyper gauge, I'm actually fine with punishing him there. So I'm going to actually try to assume here that he's going to taunt. And maybe he does, and he does here, which is good. Again, it's that almost immediate turning around that you're safe for. It's just you don't want him to stop and then turn slowly into it. I think this may have an opening. And it may, yes, okay, this one does have an opening. So we're safe. I'm getting a lot of damage off here just because of those openings we're getting. I was very close. We're okay though. See, now he's digging, and he won't taunt, I believe, if he does this digging attack here. So don't assume that. Got another part break. I believe that was the horn, which is good. It doesn't take too long to break them compared to normal Diablos. I guess percentage-wise, because he does have more health. I want to say he has like 20,000 or something. Maybe 18, something like that. It's a lot, though. You know, it's not anything to scoff at. But his face is weaker because it is applied with hyper. So it does have a slightly better hit zone compared to regular Diablos. Got an actual topple from just attacking his legs, which is good. And again, I'm finding a lot more even openings just to take him down with standard Mega Boomerangs here and there, just from his standard attacks. It's not that complicated of a fight. Once you get his tails down, he's really simple. He's a fun fight. I'm not even going to say he's a bad fight. He's really fun. It's just, you know, not anything you would expect like a bloodbath to be. You know, you don't want to let your guard down there. Even though Bloodbath is kind of just similar in regards to just the realm of Deviance, where he's not the most complicated thing in the world. You only have a couple of attacks you actually have to watch out for just because they have a wide explosion radius. But other than that, he's fairly simple once you get his tells and patterns down, which I know is kind of just the essence of Monster Hunter in general. But some monsters have harder things that you have to deal with regularly that aren't just as easy as dodge into this very slow moving attack that has an active hitbox the entire time. So again, while he's simple, I really do enjoy him just because of the fact that he's kind of a fun fight. Yes, he takes a while because he's very tanky. He has a lot of that HP that I was talking about, but it's not terrible, right? I'm past the 15-minute mark, which isn't the best in the world, but I'd rather fight this guy any day than a Savage Devil Joe in this game. I'm not even going to wait for him to sleep. I may get pushed out of this, though. We'll see. Yeah, I will be. That's okay. It's just the tail sweep. Doesn't do that much. All right, he's going to taunt here. I could use a Mega Boomerang there, but I'm not. I'm going to maybe try to get this one break. It is holding on for a very long time, so I may not even get it, but we'll see. We'll find out. Do a digging attack here. Go ahead and sheath and run. The further away you run, it's fine. You know, you don't have to worry about being too close to it. In fact, if you are too close to it, he'll be farther away when he finishes the attack. So if you do want to really just kind of follow up from it and take advantage of him, because he can still do the taunt animation after he digs, then you do want to run a little further away. Little tackle. If he does the scoop upwards, he will not do a taunt afterwards. So if he does a double combo, but he does a scoop upwards, you can tell that that's not the combo that actually ends with the taunt. Now he's going underground here, so that was a bit risky. I still got some damage off, but it wouldn't have finished him off because they're invincible at 1 HP. Or let me say they can only be lowered to 1 HP if they're like doing something like a dig attack or anything. And that may have been what happened there, because that single attack finished him off. Either way, again, simple hunt, but fairly fun and easy. Go ahead and cover him up. I'll meet you back at base. All right, back to the hub with Thunder Weapon in hand. We'll go ahead and eat our meal and then go to our next monster. I'll just cover the weapons together because there's nothing particularly special about these today. The next quest we'll be taking on is called It Takes Mizutsune to Tango. As a slaying a hyper Mizutsune, or hunting, not slaying, in the Primal Forest. Now we'll be slaying it because we don't carry traps, but you can trap it. Go ahead and take the quest and head on out. Alright, so like I said earlier, I have not practiced Hyper Mizutsune. I don't think it will be terrible. Again, it's not like he has anything too new. It's just that he's either going to be a bit faster or a bit slower with some of his attacks. The interesting thing right now is all of his hyper spots are on the backside of his body, so they are going to be a bit harder if I'm going to be, you know, the only one up. If my cats are taking aggro, then it'll be easier to aim at the leg and the tail. But if he's constantly head turning towards me, then it's going to be a bit harder, obviously. I'm going to try to get some gauge here. I think there are some good opportunities to actually use Mega Boomerang, and we'll find out during the course of the fight, and I'll try to say whenever I think good times are. But all of that hinges on whether or not I'm actually going to be able to gather up some gauge. Alright, already got a topple from, I believe, him just attacking. He has some stances where he'll attack, and if you attack him, he'll fall over. It really just depends. It's more of a head topple, so to speak. I think it's when he's like lathered in bubbles or something like that. It's a lot more noticeable in Rise, where if you do a lot of damage to his head, he'll just fall over. And it's a lot easier to trigger there. Here, it may just be anywhere as long as you attack him correctly at the right times. Again, he's not really too fast. He's just going to have a lot larger bubbles and stuff. I did get hit by that, but this would be an opening for a Mega Boomerang. Just try to make sure you're behind him. That way he does have to head turn towards you. He will growl after that attack as well, so you still do have the opening from that. I don't think it's enough for 2 Mega Boomerangs, but if you're really well positioned, you may actually have enough time for it. However, I didn't have enough gauge to even test up there. Here's the other ring around again. I'll try to get out of the way. It is a bit generous, actually. I would have expected it to hit me there, because Tigrex has a similar attack where he spins, and his arm actually scoops outwards. So it may look like you'd actually dodge it, but that arm swipe is delayed, and it is a bit off, not really off-putting, but it kind of throws you off guard. Let me say it like that, because you're thinking you're not going to get hit, and suddenly you're hit from behind or something like that. Mizutsune is a fight that I used to not like when I first played the game, and I think in general, that may be how a lot of people feel about the fights in the game. But once you actually learn that he's kind of a more unorthodox monster, and his attack patterns do kind of just go all over the place, you just kind of got to trust he's trying to aim and hit you, you'll be fine. You know, he may scoop up in a weird direction, and if you're, not used to his moveset, then you're going to expect him to go just in a weird direction. However, it's actually going to curve and hit you, and that's kind of how he's designed. Legiacris is similar in that regard. He's not as wild, I'll say. Again, Mizutsune, that's kind of his specialty, so to speak, is just kind of being, I guess, elegant. I guess that's kind of the idea here. But it can throw you off guard if you're new to the fight and you're not really quite used to him being all over the place. And he does have a lot of tracking, especially for an old gen monster. But, not as much as the newer gens, because those are very much crazy. I believe this is another opening for a Mega Boomerang. I'll go ahead and use it here just to show that even after about half of the attack going through, I still had enough to get one off. There's a face break. Mizutsune has a very easy face break. Like I was talking about before in Rise, it just breaks very quickly. All right, he's going to growl now, so we'll try to punish that. Wait for him to look at me. He's just shooting bubbles right now, but this is his triple. I tried to dodge there, but I was a little late. That's okay, though. Not the end of the world. He doesn't actually deal that much damage, and we have both of our buffs up, so as long as I heal sometime soon, I'm going to try to let the... Well, I was going to try to let the red health recover, but I got hit by an attack up bubble, so not the end of the world. Kind of a lose-win situation, I guess. Lost the red health, but red health doesn't matter much half the time. This is a bit confusing. He did just kind of get right up in the camera, and that makes it a lot harder to tell what he's doing. Alright, dodge to the right. Go ahead and reapply big boomerangs here. He's going to turn around and look. I'm going to try to curve our second one into him. The first one just missed. There's a double bite there. I'm going to spin to the right. Try to center myself a bit away from him. I will dodge into him, though. Double swipes. I'm going to actually dodge backwards here. This is a bit greedy, but I think I might have enough time. Not really. Very close, but if I had started it a little bit earlier, I would have traded blows instead of just losing it entirely. All right, lost an acorn there. That was just kind of a weird series of events. I got hit by a bubble, and I tried to recover from it with Soothing Roll, which I had the gauge for, and I would have been fine with it. However, our wonderful friend, the ledge, was kind of just in a bad spot there. So I fell off the ledge, got hit by another bubble, or did that in the opposite direction, however it was, and that just kind of stunned me long enough. And especially considering the fact that you can't immediately Soothing Roll if you are bound by something, so mud or snow or bubble blight here, you can't immediately recover from it. You'll have to wait a couple of seconds, and it may even be just a second, but it is long enough to where it can actually end up with you getting hit, even though you're mashing the button to actually try to Soothing Roll away. Get a tail break, I believe. Didn't cut it off, obviously, but that is something that the blunt weapons can actually work towards. I doubt it gives you a tail. It probably gives you like a purple fur or something like that. So maybe not something you're going for unless you're just trying to go for all the part breaks. And at that point, you're using a cutting weapon anyways. Is actually a pretty interesting concept though, because some weapons or some monsters have blunt only and cutting only parts. So I guess technically if you're trying to go for that on all monsters solo, may not be possible unless you're like using a really weird setup with well, okay, you can hilt stab with the hunting horn and that does do cutting damage. So yes, you can technically cut tails with hunting horn. However, I think you can probably guess that that's not the most effective way. And in fact, it's actually pretty terrible. But it is possible. So I guess if that's a speedrun category, you can do it. I'm able to just kind of sit here and spam Mega Boomerangs, thankfully, because of the part breaks and whatnot. It's really good. Got another flinch. I maybe could have gotten another one out. I'm not sure, though. I'm not, you know, trying to min-max it completely because it doesn't need to be. I don't think he has as much health as Diablos. Certainly not. He's not as highly ranked. Like, Diablos is with Devil Joe in that specific tier, at the very least in this game. And Mizutsune would be probably about a tier lower, if I had to say. All right, he limped into Area 3, which is where he slept. I kind of figured, so I let him kind of waddle all the way up here. It took him a good 10 to 15 seconds to get over here. He is on his last legs, so I guess that does make sense that he'd slowly kind of wander over. We don't have any really good openers, so I'm just going to throw boomerangs and try to get rid of him before he can attack again. I doubt that'll happen, but one can hope. Let's kind of keep going into here. And since his legs are kind of tough, I wouldn't expect too many just random topples from naturally attacking him. Maybe if you're like going for the leg break specifically, obviously those will give you topples. But just natural damage topples on the legs, I don't think you'll be seeing too many of them, if I can speak correctly. Just because, you know, naturally monsters that have very hard parts on the legs aren't going to be falling over very much. And I guess that makes sense. If you have armored legs, you're not going to have problems if people are poking them with tiny little boomerangs and whatnot. All right, go ahead and spin into the face as he head turns. He's gonna just do a little flick with his tail there. I'm waiting for him to do something big. Doesn't get the chance to, he just kind of wastes all of his time, and he is down. Again, similar to Diablos, not the most complicated monster in the world, and since he doesn't have too much health, he doesn't really take that much to take down either. So I'll go ahead and cover him up and meet you back at base. All right, back to the hub. We'll go ahead and look at the weapons for the day. One of them may be usable, and the other one is just kind of there. First one we're looking at is the Diablos Hammer Cross R. 245 melee attack, white sharpness, and negative 25% affinity with plus 10 defense. High raw, low affinity, decent sharpness for, you know, G rank. I mean, good sharpness for G rank. I'll say that. It's kind of the standard though. You're not wanting to use a blue sharpness weapon unless you have a lot of other perks with the blue sharpness. And cats, as far as I'm aware, maybe one or two weapons they use a blue sharpness. So it's okay. Not anything you're going to be using other things, especially on the melee side. You're going to have a lot better options for element and just raw in general. Maybe in some weird scenario where this is the only monster you've fought, you can use it for a bomb weapon, but Ergon's right there, and I believe, if I can find it real quick, the Ergon Iron has 270, and this is just the standard one. This isn't even the hyper version, which I assume will have more raw. So yeah, no, you're not even going to be making that, because Ergon's much easier than a hyper Diablos. But in the other scenarios, there are maybe some niche cases to use it if you're wanting a strong option for kind of a hybrid build, using barrel bomb bays, which are free to build up gauge, and then maybe using something like Feline Comet or anything like that. That is an option. However, you're not going to be normally doing that, and I think there are still better options anyways. As for our second weapon, it will be the Mizutsune Parasol Cross R. has 181 melee attack with 45 water element, 0% affinity, white sharpness. This has high element. This will be a very good option for a close range water weapon. Gets much worse on the boomerang side, only 26 water element, everything else stays the same. So this is a close range one. That's why we use the Soul Seer weapon for ranged, because it has better stats compared to this one on the boomerang side. However, this one's pretty nice if you're using beast, if you're using regular, you know, that's a lot of element for, you know, a standard weapon, and it's fairly easy to get. Just as long as your damage is up, it won't take you too long to find enough Mizutsune to get it. I also did neglect to go over the Diablos hammer across R's. Boomerang side, no, you're not using this. This is lower raw than Bloodbath. I think it's 228. Yeah, it's 228 on the boomerang side, and has 5% more affinity and 10 more defense. So outshined in every way, including being a deviant weapon. So you're getting even more gauge. So obviously it's called a melee weapon or a close range weapon. So you're using it for that, for if anything. As for the armor, Diablos has 154 with 8 fire resistance, which is pretty good. That should be 16. I say should be because it is different sometimes. It isn't. It's only 12, which is okay still. But you can combine it with another piece that maybe has 8 ice resist or fire resistance and make it 16. However, I do believe the Dread King armor just naturally comes with 16. So up to you. It may combine better with another elemental resistance that you would rather have for whatever. But it's still outclassed by most of the other in-game stuff, even though he is technically an in-game monster. And for the Mizutsune one, 152, so a little bit less, but 10 water resistance, which is pretty interesting. Don't use this against thunder monsters because negative 10 thunder resistance from one piece is not great. But you can combine it with an 8 water resistance to have 18, or maybe even find another bottom piece that has 10 water resistance. I'm not sure if there are, but if you really hate water element, I guess you can use it for that. However, as always, remember that elemental attacks, though they do deal element damage, also are made up of a very large portion of raw. In fact, the majority of it is still raw, similar to our damage. We're not going to build completely into element, because then we're kind of worthless still, because it's not dealing as much as high raw and decent element would. So it's the same thing for monsters. Even if you completely negate the elemental damage of an attack, which I don't even think you can, you're still taking a very hefty amount of raw in late G rank. So keep that in mind. Don't sacrifice your raw defense too much, even if it's for okay water resistance. A neutral resistance is probably what you're shooting for, unless you have the ability to have the best defense alongside the highest thunder resistance. We can't slot that in, and especially in this game, you can't slot that in as easily as in the later games, where you have a bunch of one slot slots that you can just slot specific things into. You actually have to commit your build to it if you want to do that in this game, and it's not really recommended. It's just generally recommended to try to play around it instead. And there we go. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, please consider leaving a comment below and maybe even consider subscribing. Until next time, bye.